The top office provides an update on the joint fact sheet, which will have the negotiated details of the recently made trade deal between South Korea and the U.S., as well as defense cooperation. It's now 7th launch of the year as North Korea fires a ballistic missile into the EC earlier today. What this means as North Korea has its relations with the U.S. in mind. We have the latest. From January to October this year, agricultural and food exports for South Korea recorded their highest. This is driven by a rise in exports to the Middle East. Good evening, welcome to Newscenter. With more than a week since the ROK-U.S. summit in Gyeongju, questions are mounting over when the two sides will release the joint fact sheet outlining their discussions on trade and security. South Korea's presidential office says it may take longer than initially expected. Also, it seems like the top office is betting on the tariffs to stay regardless of any Supreme Court ruling. Our presidential office correspondent Song Yoo-jin starts us off.
It seems like the release of the joint fact sheet between South Korea and the United States covering both trade and security negotiations may take longer than expected. A senior official from South Korea's presidential office told reporters on Friday that discussions are still underway to finalize the document. The source explained that adjustments are being made to parts of the text related to security matters and that it is difficult to specify when the document will be made public. This comes after earlier expectations that with, quote, no major differences, the announcement could be made this week. On the trade front, however, there are reportedly no major sticking points at the moment. The same source downplayed concerns that a potential U.S. Supreme Court ruling against U.S. President Donald Trump's tariff policies could invalidate tariff negotiations, saying the Trump administration would have countermeasures in place. The official also addressed where South Korea's nuclear power submarines will be built. Following his summit with President Lee Jae-myung last week, President Trump posted on social media that he had given approval to build a nuclear power submarine, mentioning that the sub will be built in Philadelphia. According to the source, however, discussions between the two leaders last week were based on the premise of Seoul building the submarine's hull domestically while sourcing fuel from the U.S.
연료 공급을 허용을 해주시면 저희가 저희 기술로 재래식 무기를 탑재한 잠수함을 여러 척 건조해서.
The official added that major issues discussed between Lee and Trump will be reflected in the upcoming fact sheet, signaling that nuclear power submarines will be among them. The joint fact sheet carries significant weight as it will include the results of the months-long roller coaster-like trade talks, as well as decades-old security issues, including nuclear power submarines and reprocessing spent nuclear fuel. It's no surprise there is so much attention on what the document will contain and when it will finally be released. Song Yoo-jin, Arirang News.
North Korea has this afternoon fired a ballistic missile into the EC, its 7th launch this year. It comes just days after new U.S. sanctions targeting the North overseas cyber and revenue networks. Our correspondent Oh Soo-young has the latest.
North Korea fired a ballistic missile towards the EC on Friday, around 2 weeks after its previous provocation. Seoul's Joint Chiefs of Staff says the launch was detected at 12:35 p.m. from the Daeguan area in Pyeongan-buk-do province, traveling about 700 kilometers. The military says the missile was anticipated by intelligence. Its launch was detected and tracked immediately, with Seoul sharing information in real time with Washington and Tokyo. South Korea and the US are now analyzing which model the missile was and its capabilities. This marks North Korea's 7th ballistic missile launch this year, and the 2nd since President Lee Jae-myung took office. The North regime previously fired a missile just 16 days ago, before US President Donald Trump's visit to the peninsula to attend the APEC meeting in Gyeongju City. Friday's launch also comes 3 days after Washington strengthened sanctions aimed at curbing North Korea's overseas revenue networks through illegal cyber operations and coal exports. North Korea issued a response shortly after the sanctions were announced, condemning Washington's move as hostile pressure and warned the North would take corresponding measures. However, Korea-U.S. Group's Kim Jong-min believes Pyongyang is not about to escalate tensions with the US.
If they were angry about the sanctions and if they wanted to signal to the U.S. that it's provoking the U.S., it would not have been SRBMs, but other types like IRBMs or ICBMs. So we're not seeing that right now. And also, Mr. Trump himself mentioned that he does not mind all of the short-range ballistic missiles. So partly it could be that North Korea testing how far that Trump will be generous about, basically.
Seoul's Ministry of Unification said Thursday that the North's reaction appeared restrained, noting the message was delivered by a vice minister rather than by regime leader Kim Jong-un or senior party leadership. A South Korean official told the press that Pyongyang often aligns political statements and military activity not only to externally signal its resolve, but also to maintain policy cohesion at home.
Based on the NIS assessment a couple of days ago, it does sound like that North Korea is preparing for a potential summit. So they are managing the level of their rhetoric. But I wouldn't go as far as it is a direct signal that they are ready for dialogue immediately. We have to consider domestically, North Korea is reaching the end of the 5-year military plan. They have a lot of stuff to actually test. So this is probably part of it.
President Lee Jae-myung's National Security Council convened to review Seoul's response posture. The government urged North Korea to stop actions that threaten peace on the Korean Peninsula, noting that the launch of a ballistic missile constitutes a violation of UN Security Council resolutions. Oh Soo-young, Arirang News.
Agricultural and food products exported from South Korea from January through October came to a record high thanks to the growing popularity of Korean food in the Middle East. Our economic correspondent Park Jun-an has the details.
South Korea's K-Food Plus exports, which combine agricultural products and agro-industrial goods, recorded their highest ever export value from January through October, according to the Ministry of Agriculture, Food and Rural Affairs. The total export value for the period hit $11.24 billion, around 16.3 trillion Korean won, a notable increase of 5.7% from the same period last year, driven by strong global demand for Korean food products. By region, the Gulf Cooperation Council countries saw the highest increase, with exports reaching $339.8 million, a 20.4% rise from a year earlier. The European Union plus UK followed closely, with exports to these countries rising 14.8%. Exports to North America climbed 13.9%. Especially from July through October, Gulf Cooperation Council countries saw a whopping 23.5% increase in exports, compared to just a 0.6% increase in the U.S. Food items such as ice cream, beverages, and sauces drove the strong export growth. The Agriculture Ministry earlier this year said it plans to reach $14 billion worth of overseas shipments by the end of the year. With just November and December left, $2.76 billion worth of K-Food Plus shipments need to be made to reach this goal. The ministry said it will step up policy support for export companies by expanding financial assistance, easing export bottlenecks such as logistics and customs procedures, and promoting K-food sales through global marketing initiatives tied to Hallyu, or the Korean Wave. Park Jun-an, Arirang News.
After causing death and destruction in the Philippines after making landfall on Tuesday, Typhoon Kalmaegi struck Vietnam on Thursday evening with increasing wind speeds. At least 5 deaths have been reported in Vietnam. Yoon Jin has the details.
Typhoon Kalmaegi, after leaving the Philippines in ruins, moved on to lash through Vietnam late Thursday evening and into Friday. Having already been battling floods and record rains for the past week, Vietnam was hit by fierce winds of close to 150 kilometers per hour. The Disaster Management Agency in Vietnam reported at least 5 deaths on Friday, as well as 7 people injured and around 2,800 homes damaged. Areas in central Vietnam reported damaged buildings, submerged central roads, and fallen trees, while about 1.3 million people are reportedly to be without electricity. This Vietnamese rice farmer expresses no relief from the continuous storms.
You can tell that life is hard for us here from this flooded rice paddy field. The water receded from our home, so we moved our furniture back. And 3 days later, a storm came again and brought heavy rain.
The Vietnamese authorities mobilized more than 260,000 soldiers on Friday for search and rescue operations. Some airports and expressways have been closed and hundreds of thousands evacuated. Typhoon Kalmaegi has since weakened to a tropical storm and moved into Cambodia, while Thailand is also bracing for the storm's impact as local officials warned of flash floods, landslides, and overflowing rivers. Meanwhile, in the Philippines, the death toll from Kalmaegi climbed to 188 on Friday. The 20th storm wave to slam the Philippine archipelago this year. This typhoon is so far the world's deadliest of 2025. 이은진, 아리랑 뉴스.
Now over to the fatal power plant collapse in Ulsan. 3 workers have been confirmed dead. 2 are feared dead and 2 are missing. Rescuers are continuing their search for others still apparently buried at the site. Our Cha Young has the latest.
As of 2 p.m. Friday, firefighting officials said 3 workers have been confirmed dead, 2 are presumed to be dead, and 2 others remain missing in the fatal collapse of a boiler tower in the southeastern city of Ulsan. The 60-meter tower at Korea-U.S. powers Ulsan thermal power plant collapsed during scheduled demolition work on Thursday afternoon, trapping 9 workers at the site. A worker in his 60s, rescued at 9:06 a.m. Friday, was confirmed dead after being moved to a hospital, while another in his 50s, rescued at 11:15 a.m. this morning, was confirmed dead by staff at an on-site emergency medical facility before being moved to the hospital. The third fatality. A worker found trapped between the structure and the ground on Thursday went into cardiac arrest during a rescue attempt and was pronounced dead at 4:53 a.m. Friday. Progress at the collapse site has now been slowed to a near standstill. The entry route is blocked by a dense wall of twisted rebar and steel, forcing crews to dig through more than 30 meters of debris just to reach the collapse point. Rescue teams temporarily withdrew due to the heightened risk of a secondary collapse. Nearby boiler towers, units 4 and 6, have also been determined to be unstable, prompting the authorities to delay planned stabilization work.
Even during stabilization work, secondary accidents could occur, so that part has been put on hold. We decided in our situation assessment meeting that we will first conduct a thorough search and then move on to stabilization or find another method.
Speed matters, but the rescue has to be carried out safely, combining swift action with cautious dismantling.
The National Fire Agency is continuing to search for the missing, deploying a crane and rescue dogs after President Lee Jae-myung instructed officials to use all available personnel and equipment to save lives. Cha Young, Arirang News.
President Lee Jae-myung has pledged to create an environment where scientists and researchers have the freedom and the right to fail.
그 실패가 또 쌓여서 성공의 자산이 되는 거죠. 그래서 실패를 용인하는 그런 제대로 된 연구 개발을 할 수 있는 환경을 만들자. 그래야 나라가 흥할 수 있겠다.
The president made these remarks on Friday during a televised debate with government officials, students, and researchers aimed at strengthening South Korea's competitiveness in science and technology. Among the ideas discussed were creating dedicated funds and providing incentives for researchers who have experienced failure in their work. This comes as the government has set aside a record 35.3 trillion won, or roughly $24.2 billion for research and development in its 2026 budget proposal. Now on the cultural front, the Seoul Metropolitan Dance Theater is returning to the stage with a brand new production that explores the harmony between nature and tradition. Mimesis reinterprets Korea's traditional dance heritage through a modern lens. Pyun Ye-young was there.
Dancers dressed in white chokuri shirts with vivid blue and red skirts move gracefully across the stage. Each gesture, down to the tips of their fingers, is deliberate. Their movements are like gentle ripples gliding across a still lake. This is Kyobangmu, the opening scene of Mimesis, a new work unveiled by the Seoul Metropolitan Dance Theater at the Sejong M Theater in Gwanghwamun. After the sold-out success of Ilmu, or One Dance, the troupe returns with Mimesis. It's a reflection on how nature breathes within Korea's traditional dances. The performance reinterprets 8 classic forms, all of which represent a different element of nature, such as the wind that blows through Hallangmu and the lightning that pierces the sky in Changgyemu, with its finale culminating in fire and light.
Our dances are a complete gift set of Korean tradition and folklore. As we explored the essence of each piece, we realized that the flow of nature is deeply embedded within our heritage, that every phenomenon we live with is mirrored in our traditional forms.
The dancers' modernized hanbok are also turning heads. A sheer, form-fitting togori accentuates the dancers' breathing and movement, while voluminous skirts restore the elegance of traditional silhouettes.
The most distinctive feature of traditional attire is the balance of a slim top and full bottom. I wanted to highlight that contrast to express both structure and vitality.
In each dance, unique accessories accentuate the dancers' movements. And a live orchestra of 9 musicians perform traditional Korean instruments, filling the stage with the deep resonance of Korean rhythm. The production also features star dancer Kim Woo-gun, known from Mnet's dance competition Stage Fighter, whose intense performances in the sword dance Changgyemu and finale Taepyeongmu bring a virtuoso solo performance to this ensemble masterpiece. The first run of Mimesis continues through Sunday at the Sejong M Theater. Hyunyoung, Arirang News.
There are many reasons to wait for Fridays, and one of them is definitely the arts and culture coverage by our culture correspondent Park Kwon-woo, who is here in the studio with us. Happy Friday, Kwon-woo.
Great to be here, Doyoung.
So what do you have for us today?
So today I brought a topic that we should be taking a bit more seriously related to international adoptees, as it's been 1 month since Korea officially joined the Hague Intercountry Adoption Convention. Expectations grow for stronger protection of adopted children's rights. While some of the adoptees continue their journey to find their birth parents, I had a chance to meet one of them during their recent search in Korea. So first, take a look. Even after 5 decades, for some people, the search for their birth parents continues. 57-year-old Park Won-il, also known as Philip Peloshu, was sent to an orphanage in Korea just 3 days after birth and adopted at the age of 3. Although he says he grew up in a loving family in the U.S., Park said he sometimes faced difficulties.
I really didn't feel like I fit in. You know, Colorado at that time, and even today, I think is mostly Caucasian. You know, I kind of stood out like a sore thumb in that sense. So
that's why he always wondered about its roots and has tried every possible means to find them.
All the DNA tests that I can, and then the other thing is I try to collect all the documentation I can. Got these pictures from the adoption agency, and these were pictures of me, you know, that were presumably sent to my adoptive parents, so that they could, you know, identify the child that they were getting.
During his search, he's managed to gather bits and pieces of information about his birth, including his name, assumed birthday, and even an address in Seoul of the custodian who sent him to an orphanage. While some pieces of information about him gave him hope, he says in most cases it ultimately led to nothing.
You get some piece of information, you start getting your hopes up, and then it turns out to not go anywhere. And that's why I feel like many times I'm on a roller coaster of emotions in terms of this search.
Fortunately, he hasn't been alone in this journey, as organizations like Korea-U.S. have been there alongside him, helping him find related documents and communicate in Korean, a language he doesn't speak. Korea-U.S. has also been working hard for decades to raise awareness and advocate for better laws protecting adoptees' rights, saying there's still much more that needs to be done.
Normally, when you visit a local office or access the internet, you can easily get a family relations certificate without anyone's permission. But that's not the case for them, as their information is often incomplete. That needs to be restored so that they can find them with just a single click.
As the government also announced last month that Korea has become a contracting party to the Hague Inter-Country Adoption Convention, following an official apology for those who have suffered, more governmental support could follow. That comes as there are known to be around 170,000 people adopted abroad since the Korean War. But alongside these measures, Park says he wants to focus on continuing his search as he is getting older, as well as his biological parents. His final words, if he finally gets to meet them, were these.
I've lived long enough that I recognize, life works in mysterious ways, and that I harbor no ill feelings or ill will towards whatever circumstance my birth parents might have been in that had them give me up for adoption. I want to kind of complete, for my own completeness, to understand where I came from, and I hope that they're not afraid to come forward.
Right, so now going back to the Hague Inter-Country Adoption, what comes next now that South Korea is part of it?
So now that the country is a signatory member of that Hague Convention, the basic rights of international adoptees are guaranteed while preventing child trafficking and sales. From now on, international adoption will only be permitted after government review and only when a suitable family cannot be found domestically. This marks a stronger state responsibility and stricter standards for adoption based on the principle that it must serve the best interests of the child. That's significant, as reportedly more than 100 Korean children are adopted abroad each year on average. When President Lee issued an official apology through social media last month, he also pledged to protect adoptees along with their birth and adopted families. He also called on related organizations to cooperate to create a more human rights-based system to support adoptees and help them reconnect with their roots.
Right, and I also hear there are efforts made to accommodate or better protect adoptees coming to Korea.
That's right. So, thanks to the Hague Convention as well, a new type of visa for adoption purposes were actually issued and newly introduced last month by Korea's Ministry of Justice, allowing international adoptees a more stable stay in the country. The visa will be issued to children of foreign nationality whose adoption process to Korea is either underway or has been completed, but who reside primarily outside Korea. It grants a stay of up to 2 years, which can be further extended if necessary. The Justice Minister said he will work closely with related agencies, including the Welfare Ministry, to enable stable support for adoptees, guaranteeing their rights and helping them grow as healthy members of society.
All right, thanks for all that. I hope the best of luck for everyone involved in this.
Yeah, same here. Have a good weekend.
You too.
Today's Ipdong supposed to be the beginning of the winter season. However, mild conditions of 20 degrees Celsius appeared in Seoul, about 5 degrees above the average temperatures for this time of year. It will drop to 17 degrees tomorrow, still exceeding the average temperatures. Meanwhile, about 5 to 30 millimeters of rain is expected in eastern parts of Gangwon-do province until tomorrow afternoon. Rain will spread to Chungcheongnam-do province and the south tomorrow. Occasional spells of rain are forecast for Sunday throughout the country, except for eastern parts of Gangwon-do province. Most areas will start off in double digits tomorrow morning, with Seoul at 11 degrees, Gwangju at 12 degrees. Daily highs will move up to 16 degrees in Chuncheon, 18 degrees in Daejeon and Daegu. Milder temperatures will appear again in the second half of next week. That's all for Korea. Here are the weather conditions around the world.
And that ends our evening newscast for tonight from all of us at the News Center here in Seoul. Thank you for watching.